start to turn it around.
Well, you better listen, my sisters and brothers, because if you do, you can hear there are voices still calling across the years, and they're all crying across the ocean, and they're crying across the land, and they will till we all come to understand. None of us are free.
And welcome to Heal DC. We're listening to that song, None of Us Are Free Till All of Us Are Free, which is going to be our theme for this hour. And we're also doing a special second hour today at 11 o'clock, talking about the rallies, the two rallies that took place here in DC. So stay tuned with us till 12 noon and beyond. This first half of this show, I've been so excited about this for months. And we are happy and honored to have Denise Rolark Barnes, the publisher of the Washington Informer, who is celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Washington Informer throughout this year. We're going to be with Denise for the next half hour. Hopefully Chuck will be jumping on with us. But good morning, Denise.
Good morning, Joni, and good morning, WPF family. Glad to be with you all this gorgeous morning in Washington, D.C.
Yes, I don't know. Well, we have some sobering news, of course, that we're going to talk about in the second hour, what's going on in this world of ours. But for some of this first half hour, it's going to be a lot of joy. I know for me and for people who are familiar with Denise and the Washington Informer, amazing history. And I'm proud to share it, a part of it, because I'm learning that a lot of the younger people do not know the important history of the Washington Informer. So, Denise, let's start out with congratulations to you. Tell us when the Washington Informer, the date and year that the Washington Informer was launched.
It was launched on October 16, 1964.
And as some people would know, October 16th is a very important day. It's not only the day that John Brown raided Harper's Ferry, it's also the date of the Million Man March.
Exactly.
And more. So the Washington Informer is in good company. So let's start with, of course, we're going to talk about some of the history of the Washington Informer, relationship to PFW, and your wonderful celebration last Friday. But we're going to start with your dad. Tell us about Calvin Rolark, who is still a hero to many of us. Tell us about him and what was going on when he launched the Washington Informer.
So thank you for that opportunity, Joni, and to talk about my father, Dr. Calvin William Rolark. Came to Washington, D.C., I think it was in 1950. I'll just share with folks that we did a 60th anniversary publication, which was inserted in the paper week before last. And if anybody's interested in getting a copy, which has the complete history of the Informer, a lot of great photos, a lot of great stories about our honorees, we certainly would love to share it with you. So, just give us a call here at 202-561-4100, and we'll make sure that you can get a copy. But my dad, like so many of, I'll say our parents or grandparents, came to Washington, D.C., was born in Texarkana, Texas, went to Prairie View A&M University, wanted to be a football player, got tackled on the field and decided he would become an announcer. And his brother played football, but he left Prairie View, majored in business administration. That's where he graduated, and joined the Air Force. And he was participated in the Korean War. He was a paratrooper. He left the service, relocated here to Washington, D.C., following his older brother, and worked actually for at the Pentagon for a while. He sold insurance for one of the nation's only 2 or 3 Black-owned insurance companies, North Carolina Mutual Beneficial Insurance Company, which is where he met Marion Barry as a young kid in Memphis, Tennessee, and also became good friends with Benjamin Hooks, as you know, was an attorney, a preacher, former chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, and also president of the NAACP. So, in that Memphis area, sort of where he got his connections to the civil rights movement. Came to DC, like I said, met my mom, Vera Abbott. They married, they had me. And not long after that, my mom, my stepmom, all were very, very engaged in the U Street Business and Professional Association, because, DC was still very much segregated in the early 50s. And so that's where all the Black entrepreneurs were, which is why we have a Ben's Chili Bowl, Industrial Bank, and Lee's Florist, and so many other institutions that were operated along that corridor, including one of our former publications, the New Observer newspaper, which was located at 9th in Florida. So my father became the managing editor of the New Observer, and which is where I kind of got a chance to, go to places like the Howard Theater as a little kid, and, met Nat King Cole and Sarah Vaughan, and didn't know who these people were, but, because I hung out with him, I got a chance to meet folks. And then later on, as as things began Black folks began to stretch their muscles to try to gain some type of leadership in the city. And then, so there became a movement for self-determination. I don't know if they were looking for statehood at the time, but it definitely, home rule was really key. I remember my father started the paper because he wanted to focus more on the political movement of the city and letting people know kind of what Black folks were doing or not being allowed to do as we were trying to gain power and influence in the District of Columbia. So at that time, Marion Barry had come to the city, Stokely Carmichael was here, Channing Phillips. I mean, there's a whole bunch of folks who were really involved in that movement, and women as well. And that's when he decided to start the Washington Informer. By that time, he had married my stepmother, attorney Wilhelmina Rolark, who was, like I said, she was a lawyer and very involved in that whole movement as well. And so, I mean, there's more and more, but I will say that I remember one of the first editions of the Washington Informer, his headline was DC controlled by suburban white folks.
Wow.
And then he wrote his one and only book called Know Your DC Government. And he did it on purpose because, and I have the copy nearby, but he wanted people to see, who ran these agencies. He wanted people to see their faces. It was a picture book. It wasn't much text in it, but mostly photographs of all of the individuals who ran every DC government agency in the District of Columbia. And it was mostly, I don't think there were few, if any, Black faces or any non-white faces, I'll put it that way, in that book. And that happened as a result of him trying to get a meeting with someone in one of these agencies. And he sat there for almost 3 hours because no one would, he had set the meeting up, but they kept delaying it. And he didn't know that this person had walked past him a couple of times and ignored him. So that's when he realized we need to know the faces of the people that run our agencies. And today we still do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Race has very little to do with it. It's really about knowing who runs our government agencies and making sure that, we stay in touch with them and keep them accountable for what our needs are.
Absolutely. Denise, I know I had really hoped you could be on for the hour, but you said a half an hour, so we have a lot to cover in the next 15 minutes. Share with her, because for those listeners who do not know, Calvin Rolark was and is a major hero. He was a hero right there with Marion Barry. So tell us also about the Black United Fund, if I'm getting, or is a United Black Fund, and,
right.
And your dad's role with that.
Well, that the United Black Fund was born out of a movement, again, of the Black United Front. And you had folks like Marion Barry, Ab Jordan. There are a bunch of, I guess, DC activists who recognized, as we all did, how do we channel our resources? There were organizations, nonprofit organizations that were doing work in the community, but they didn't necessarily know how to get their 501c3. They couldn't get their, the tax exempts, the bylaws. All of that structural stuff was what was lacking. And so I think there was a conversation. I don't know the whole history, but there's a conversation about creating a fund. And my father, went forward, launched it with the help of my stepmother, who, put all the groundwork together. And it was at a time when we had the combined federal campaign, and which was what we call United Way today. And mostly Black and brown organizations could not get support from the combined federal campaign. So they sued. United Black Fund sued them for racial discrimination, and they won the lawsuit. And the result of that lawsuit was that, now, and this was the first in the country, that a percentage of non-designated dollars, undesignated donations to the combined federal campaign had to go to the United Black Fund. So you could designate an organization, but a lot of people just gave to UGF, to the CFC. And so those dollars, it was that pool of dollars that a percentage of that had to go to UBF. And then eventually the CFC became United Way, and United Way and United Black Fund had a great relationship. By the time my dad had passed, by the time he passed in 1994, United Black Fund started, I think, in 1974. By 1994, there were over 100 small community-based nonprofit organizations that were getting grants from United Black Fund. In addition, they helped them to do their bylaws, to set up their boards of directors, to make sure they had their 501c3 status, help them with locations for rent. All kinds of training was provided for these small nonprofits to help them to grow. The amount of money they got in some cases was small, but you think about institutions like Howard University Sickle Cell Center, Sickle Cell. That was one of their major programs, and actually was responsible for purchasing the sickle cell mobile that used to go around the city. So there are a lot of things UBF was credited for, and it saddens me that they're not. It saddens me that they're not where they were.
Well, and they're not being. This history is not being remembered. I'm happy to see that Chuck has joined us, and hopefully Chuck can jump in with a question. But we have a lot to cover. I just want to say that from my perspective, and I'm sure many as well, that Calvin Rolark, again, was a hero. I would consider him a revolutionary, and he was very much linked with WPFW. So I'm just going to mention that for a moment. I remember back in the day when Calvin, I believe both Knapp, don't forget the Blues Turner, which some people don't even remember Knapp, who was on the air with us for decades, together with Gaston Neal, who was also on our airwaves, we're working closely with Calvin Rolark, and including in the month of September, I believe they worked together around the substance abuse issues. But Calvin was right there, from my memory, with Tom Porter back in those early 90s on WPFW. Do you want to say anything?
That actually, Joni, because when I think about it, when the Washington Informer was started, we were located at 715 G Street Northwest, right in Chinatown.
Wow.
The back of the building where the newspaper was located was the back of the building where WPFW was located, because WPFW was at 8th and H, and we were at 7th and G. And so, Askia and a lot of the folks that were there, you'd come out and just walk around the block and go into the PFW. And I think that's really, and that had to have been maybe the late 70s, early 80s, I think, when that connection really began. And then you think about, oh God, I'm having brain freeze, but, Tiger Flower, folks that did Human Kindness Day.
Mm-hmm.
Their offices were right upstairs from our office. It was a lot of us in that little downtown block that connected and supported one another.
Absolutely. And so in my way of looking at things, Calvin Rolark was always a part of PFW from as long as I can remember. Chuck, you want to jump in with a question or comment?
Well, I'm reminded of how much Dr. Rolark had his pulse, his hand on the pulse of the people, and not necessarily the people who were upper middle class, but the people who were struggling, poor people. He was very, very aware of the challenges that poor people face, how important it was for them to have a voice. I think that one of his greatest attributes was having the sense to understand that people who were poor, black, and people of color were struggling and needed a voice, and he became part of that voice. We'll be forever grateful, as well as his daughter, who has that same philosophy. She needs not want to forget on whose shoulder I stand.
Absolutely. And Denise, so we only have 10 minutes left. Is that right?
Well, let me check.
But because I'm going to keep rushing, because we also want to celebrate your dad and you, and what the Washington Informer has been able to do and has done with all these decades. Neither Chuck or I were able to attend what I'm sure was a fabulous celebration the other Friday. And this may be hard to do, but if you could pick out, for those people who don't know, and remember there are listeners who don't know, some of the highlights of the Washington Informer, either starting with your dad or starting with when you became the publisher. What are some of the things that you're really proud about, and maybe were discussed at the celebration?
So the one thing I'll say about the celebration, Joni, and this probably speaks to what I'm most proud of. I just thought 60 years is, it's a long time, but it's not a long time, right? And so it was hard for me to really think about what we could do to celebrate ourselves. And I looked around and I said, the stories that we tell are about our community. Dr. Rolark, my dad wanted to make sure that, as Black press across the country does, to make sure that, we amplify the voices of our community, and we give our community reasons not only to fight, but to celebrate for things. And those are the institutions that have also carried us through. So I looked around and I said, well, they're the folks that we normally celebrate. Ben's Chili Bowl that just celebrated, I forget how many years, but Industrial Bank just celebrated 70 years. Lee's Florist, about 70, 80 years. Cheryl Lofton, who has a tailoring shop, 5th generation. And we looked at even an institution that's not a Black-owned institution, but served the Black community and continues to do so, which is Chuck Levin's, which is now in its fourth generation. So I looked at generational businesses, and those of us who are in leadership of the institutions that our parents and grandparents, and in some cases great grandparents started, that still are serving this community. To me, that was what we need to celebrate. We need to acknowledge those businesses and those families who understood the mission of legacy and vision, and sort of enjoying our own culture, or the culture of DC. We are DC, right? A Giant Foods commercial, because it's like, we are DC. I'm like, whoever did that was like fantastic when they came. But we are DC. So we really used the anniversary to celebrate them. And one of our honorees also was Stefan Lockridge. Stefan's uncle was once the president of a member of the DC school board. His father was a member of the school board. They're Black men who have been in educate. He has a legacy of education. And Stefan is a young man in his early 40s who's been teaching for 12 years. And so there's a legacy of education there. So those were our honorees. And we just happened to weave a little bit of our story into that. But, our story is the Washington Informer story is our story. It's Washington's story. It's the way we've been able to capture what people have done to make DC what it is. And now we can always be critical of things that, happen or don't happen. And we write about those things. But in the end, we have so much to celebrate. And in our 60 years, we're celebrating with all of Washington. So that's, if we talk about running a business, we all had our ups and downs and what have you. But, we're just looking at how we've been able to not only survive, but thrive during riots, and, a whole bunch of stuff that's happened in the city. And even now, what we're facing and how it's going to impact our businesses. So,
right. And Katia just texted me saying she grew up, I think she said her dad used to take her to Chuck Levin's all the time. And I know a lot of other people I know have spent a lot of time there. But I wanted to also celebrate the present, the articles, the journalism that you do each and every week. And of course, Askia used to be a regular contributor. Julian Malveaux is now, and others that are part of the PFW family, but also the stories. And I must give a shout out to Sam P.K. Collins, one of your great reporters. And just this last week did a fabulous front page picture with Tyrone Parker, who is part of the PFW family, just came out with his book. And he's going to be celebrating that book at, I think, Ben's Chili Bowl, April 13th. But the way that the writing it's just outstanding. That story alone. So I think for people who do not know the Washington Informer, you can find it on many, many places throughout the city. But we want to congratulate you, Denise, for the outstanding journalism that you do each and every week.
Well, I'm a graduate of Howard University's School of Communications. I lean on the school a lot to make sure that, we provide opportunities for their interns, trying to recreate that relationship with the University of the District of Columbia. And so, historically, and I'm proud of this, historically, the Black press has been the place where those journalists have launched their careers. They started with us. And so, and then some go on and become, great journalists in other places, and some will stick around. I'm just proud of the fact that the community has supported us, and local businesses have supported us to the extent that now we can pay a competitive wage. Because always that, you work for the Black press, you're working for peanuts or And there was a time that happened, but we really strive now to be more competitive. But we need to be competitive all across the board. And I'll just say this, Joni, when I remember a few years ago when I pulled all the publishers together to do a special issue for Black Press Week, because we're a member of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. And Black Press Week, we always celebrate here in Washington, D.C. And there were at least 14 Black-owned newspapers in the DMV. Today, there's one. And that saddens me. The Afro is still circulated here, but, they're Baltimore-based. It saddens me, but it means that there's more of a responsibility we have to make sure that our community's voices are heard. And so we, if I can say, we just like WPFW, if we ever needed your support, we need it now. And because we just, this is an era where people don't support journalism. They've stopped reading newspapers. They've stopped listening to radio stations. They've stopped watching television. And they're beginning to slowly turn off social media. But you need information. Kathy Hughes used to say it all the time. Information is power.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we need WPFW and the Informer and others. So, your support is critical right now. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And I also want to give a shout out. People may not know that about 2 or 3 weeks ago at the Metropolitan Washington AME Church over there at 14th and when I'm getting 15th and M, the Church of Frederick Douglass, the church where Rosa Parks had her homegoing and much, much more. There was a fabulous event celebrating 98 years of the Black press and 60 years of the Washington Informer.
Actually, 198 years.
Oh. Sorry, 198 years, almost 200 years of the Black press. And it was just a really inspiring event. Just talk briefly, I know we're almost out of time, but about Ben Chavis and the National Black Press and your relationship to them with the Informer.
So, I'll start off by saying, I know that for the Informer, I wanted to have, as we celebrated our 60th anniversary, I thought it was important for us to go to a house of prayer, because everything I believe as I get older, prayer is critical, right? I mean, I should have believed it earlier, but I really believe it now. And so I thought, we needed inspiration, and I wanted to do something with just with the Informer, but then recognizing, what's happening to journalists across the DMV, that maybe we should have a Black Press Sunday, no matter who you work for, no matter whether you were Black or not. If you remember the media, we needed a place where we could come and get a word of inspiration. So I reached out to Reverend Lamar, asked if we could do it at Metropolitan because of the historical significance that you just mentioned. And he, said, let's do it. And so fortunately, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, which is President Dr. Benjamin Chavis, was there as well to celebrate. And like I said, it was Black Press Week because the first Black newspaper in America was founded on March 16th, 1827. And so that was, it was just coincidental that the 16th was also a Sunday. And so that's why we all gathered there. The National Newspaper Publishers Association is our trade association. And there are over 200 members of NNPA. They're Black newspaper publishers from around the country. And the interesting thing to me, Joni, is that I would say about 30% of those publishers are women.
Wow.
And I would say maybe about 20% of us are second generation publishers. So, so that's why folks were in town, but they couldn't get to that. But it was so good to see other local journalists there. But yeah, the NNPA will be celebrating the 200th anniversary of the Black press in 2027. And so it was, it was a great gathering and a great message, I think.
So
for us to get together and
it was truly inspiring. Chuck, you're listening to WPFW 89.3 FM. This is To Heal DC. We're proud to have Denise Rolark Barnes, the publisher of the Washington Informer, who are celebrating their 60th year throughout part of last year and this year till October 16th, 2025. And in a moment, we're going to jump to speaking with a Ward 8 activist, Mustafa Abdul-Salaam, who's going to share with us one of his projects. But Denise, I'm going to ask you for a few more minutes.
I'm good.
So again, we would have loved to have you on for the hour. So, and Chuck, if you have a question, you can jump in now. But I want to continue with the being proud of the Informer.
Just briefly, one of the things that I think about the Black press is that if it had not been for the Black press, the fight in the civil rights movement would probably have not been as successful as it is, because white press did not cover much of the civil rights movement until a Black press started doing it and covered the Emmett Till and all the many other stories that happened. But white press did not cover the civil rights movement in the beginning. It was the Black press, and for that we're grateful. I'm grateful.
And you're right, Chuck. And the fact is, it's the same. It's true today. The stories that you read in the Washington Informer are not going to be read in the mainstream mostly white press. So we are very proud of the Informer. And I'll say one of my dreams, I hate to say I have a dream, because we have to move we have to move beyond dreams. But I really think, and I haven't discussed this with officially yet, but I really would love to see a strong partnership between WPFW as we move forward into these very frightening, challenging times. WPFW, which is essentially a Black-run community radio station, really the only one that's Black-led, I believe, in the whole country, and a partnership with WPFW and with the Washington Informer. So even if it's not official or whatever it is, we hope to really be working more closely with you, Denise, as in these challenging times.
Well, I think, that's, as I say, that's nothing but a word. Now we have to manifest it in some way. And I'm really grateful to WPFW, which has been there when we did our Martin Luther King parade and peace walk. You all have been there to support that. And, we're looking for ways when you all do your anniversaries or different ways we can help to support. So it's a conversation that we need to have to figure out how, what will work for us, but not only just for us, for our listeners and our readers,
Right.
Because that's what we really want to do, is to try to amplify, I keep using the word amplify, but amplify these voices so that folks will know that there are alternatives out there that they don't have to turn off. They need to turn on. And so I look forward to having those conversations. I'll just say as an aside, we're talking about doing the same thing with Howard University Television. They're looking for ways to partner. If this moment in time hasn't done anything, it's at least expanded the conversation of how we need to work together more intentionally. And so I'm looking forward to those conversations. And if I got to pull that together, then that's what I'm going to do.
Great. And Denise will be telling you more offline, but PFW is celebrating our 48th anniversary on Friday, April 25th, with a fabulous event, beautiful concert. So perhaps you can join us on that occasion. But we'll definitely be in touch with you. We're thankful as far as I'm concerned, I'd be happy to have you on all day. And Denise is often once a month on with Ambrose Elaine Jr. At 5 p.m. And his show To the East. Ambrose is recovering and is in the stage of recovery. We know that he will be back soon. We don't know exactly when, but he would have been on, Denise would have been on with him today, but we send Ambrose all of our love and get well wishes and look forward to Denise and Phil Pinnell with the Anacostia Coordinating Council being back on with Ambrose at 5 p.m. So Denise, I hate to say goodbye to you.
Yeah, well, I'm just down the street, kind of across the river and around the corner. But anytime, Joni, anytime.
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to you, later on today, or definitely by tomorrow.
Right, 'cause that's a big thing's coming up, Emancipation
Yes.
Day, and
Yes.
again, stories that people don't know that we need to help to tell, so that every generation that grows up in the city or comes to the city knows about the story of the nation's capital.
Absolutely. We're not going to share it today, but we do have a special DC Emancipation event coming up, which we will be hopefully sharing soon. Denise, thank you so much. We're going to jump into focus on Ward 8 in a minute, but congratulations on your 60 years, and we wish you many more, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Joni, and Chuck. Take care.
Okay, we're going to have a little music, and then we're going to talk real quick to our next guest, Mustafa Abdul-Salaam. A good song to welcome our next guest. We has a little less time than we had planned, but Mustafa Abdul-Salaam, we are thankful to finally have you on the airwaves with us. Good morning. If you can unmute yourself, and hopefully you will be right on. Mustafa is doing a very special initiative in Ward 8, which he's been working on for a number of years. I hope he can jump on and tell us about it.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Good morning, Mustafa.
Good morning, and I'm glad to be on. So thank you for inviting me.
Okay, and I'm sorry we have a little less time, but first of all, Mustafa, tell our listeners who you are, a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and then we're going to jump into your work that you've been doing in Ward 8.
Again, Mustafa Abdul-Salaam. I'm a native of New Haven, Connecticut, but I've been in DC for over 20 years, and I came down to run a child welfare agency called For the Love of Children. Did that for a number of years, decided I wanted to stay in DC, so I relocated to Ward 8, and at the time, Marion Barry was still alive in the office, and he was preparing for gentrification that was on the way. He created two entities, the Ward 8 Workforce Development Council and the Ward 8 Health Council. I got actively involved in the Workforce Development Council, and over 5 years, I participated and took leadership in creating 3 strategic plans. And after the Workforce Development Council kind of went away, I continued focusing on the need to come up with a plan for Ward 8. And over a number of years, got the seniors in Ward 8 to create a senior council around community development and use that as a platform for advocating for the plan. And in February 2023, the community created the plan. It's called the Ward 8 Community Economic Development Report. And in that report, we 1,000 residents and had over 50 town hall meetings. And the report reflects the findings of the residents and of interest they have. So anybody that really wants to get a picture of what's going on in Ward 8 and what the want, if you read that, it gives a lot of clarity, which is important because in the past, there wasn't that kind of documentation. So therefore, it was much more difficult to really focus on the needs of the community. So that report really positions Ward 8 to really have a clear agenda that is a bottom-up agenda that represents the residents' needs and desires, as opposed to what happens traditionally, where most things are done top-down, and those types of strategies, whatever comes out of it, really is not reflective of the community. So, opportunity to with the report to build on it, and last year or so, we have been working to create what we call the Ward 8 Community Economic Development Think Tank. And the think tank is an opportunity to take the report and actually implement it and make sure those things that the residents identified can come into fruition. So we're excited about it. If you're interested in going into the website, it's Ward 8 CED Think Tank.com. So Ward 8 CED Think Tank is one word, and then .com. The website has just been created, but it's designed to help people understand what we have done over the last 5 or 6 years to create a report, and now are looking to implement that report. So we're excited. We actually have a documentary of the planning process coming out in September.
Wow.
An opportunity for the community to actually see what has accomplished. And there's no other ward in the district that has this kind of comprehensive report of what the community desires moving forward. So it's been a major achievement, but we're only starting. What we're trying to do with the think tank is move away from reacting to crisis and being more proactive and looking at ways that we can develop strategies for the next 5, 10, 20 years to really change the dynamics in the community. So that's just a brief overview.
And that's very exciting. We're very proud. I'll say, I'm sure many of our listeners are very proud of what you are doing. And I guess I have 2 quick questions. I know that you said you involved, did you say 1,000 residents? And I believe that those residents were a cross-section of young people, correct? And
Yes,
older people. So just talk for a minute about the cross-section of the Ward 8 residents that you involved very actively in this report.
Yeah, and what makes it really important, special, is that the actual surveyors were residents. We identified residents, trained them, and they were the ones that went out and did the survey, which is different and exceptional, because most times you have people who drop into the community to do the surveys, and then they take the data and leave. We actually, everything that we've done around the report and creating the report was dealt with in the community itself. So it's, again, an excellent model of what you can do when you invest with with a bottom-up process. You actually engage the residents, you empower them, and because of that, they, are much more interested in participating. So we had the whole range. We had residents as young as 14 and as old as in their 70s, male and females. And what we saw with the data that we collected is, the poverty is really the biggest challenge we have in Ward 8. And mainly because for the last 60 years, we have invested in poverty in ways that no other neighborhoods have. And we're seeing the outcome of that, where you have people who've been so dependent on systems that they now are struggling to become self-sufficient in an environment that no longer is taking care of people in need. So we see this as a critical turning point. but it's an opportunity for the community to begin to focus on wealth building as opposed to poverty, because wealth building really is the answer for a lot of the issues that the community is facing. If we can increase incomes levels through education and workforce development activities, then we have a greater potential of the current residents, most of the current residents, being able to stay in place as gentrification continues to evolve. One of the effects of gentrification is that the rent and the purchase of homes become so high that if you're not at a certain income level, you just can't afford to live in that environment. And we're moving very closely to that reality of Ward 8. So if we don't do anything significantly to increase residents' income and minimize the housing, issues, then we're going to continue to see a lot of people being displaced, and we're going to see the population, particularly of the African American population, decreasing.
Absolutely, and of course, the homelessness is rising. I just want to say again, we're speaking to Mustafa Abdul-Salaam. I'm going to say I'm very proud of you and the work you're doing. As someone who's worked for decades in the DC government, I started when Marion Barry was there, but ended up when he was long gone. And what Mustafa is saying is absolutely correct. When the government these days and perhaps other groups do these surveys, there's very little involvement with the community and very little, frankly, commitment to the community. So the work he's doing, I would say, is extremely important. What would you say, Mustafa, are, as we know that poverty is a crisis in Ward 8 and really in this country, and of course, overcoming it would be, is quite a challenge. How would you say would be some of your hopeful goals that might have been included in the report, or where do you see you and your work moving in the next, let's just say, 2 to 5 years, given the fact of the crisis that the nation is in right now?
Yes, that's a good question. Again, we have to move from being reactionary and crisis orientated to more proactive and create entities that can be institutionalized. And that's one of the things we're trying to do with the think tank. We need entities that are not reactionary in nature, but do the hard work of collecting the data, developing those strategies that move the community forward. Again, if we're talking about 20 years, the reason why 20 years is so important is that you look at a child born today.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Mustafa, for a minute. I hear Chuck in the background. If you want to jump in and ask a question or else keep yourself on mute. But did you have a question, Chuck? If not, okay, I apologize, Mustafa.
No problem. So a 20-year plan allows us to look at the child that's born today. What do we need to do to make sure that when they're 20 years old, they're self-sufficient and can function and create the kind of life that is a healthy life? We can't wait till they get 5 years old or 10 years old, definitely not 15. So we're really focusing on developing our most precious commodity and asset, and that's our children. And the way we're looking at how we measure our success is on the growth and development of our children. So we want to be child-centered, family-focused, and community-based, which means that everything we do, we got to ask the question, how is it going to impact children? If it's not impacting children in a way that is positive and it's going to help them to be healthy, then the question is why we're doing this. And that has to be our measurement for everything we do. Because children are our future, and if given the opportunity, they can develop the skills and the ability to transform not only their community, but their society. And that's how important and valuable they are. So we're, again, excited because we're trying to move in areas that we have not been before. We have not really taken a leadership in developing our own agendas and controlling the resources in the community. And that's a key point. We want to move to the point where the community is co-governing with the government. There's no longer a top from the government. These are the things you have to do. If you want funding from us, this is what you have to do. We want to be able to have our strategy and talk to the city government about what we can do to work based on trying to promote. Because governments don't have a long-term agenda because they can't. The most they can have is like as long as they can stay in office, 4 years, 8 years, even 12 years. But the community can have a 20-year agenda, 40 years agenda, and they could outlive any elected official because it's the community. So the power and the strategies need to be built in the community, because if not, anytime the administration change, the community has to change with that administration, whether it's a good or bad thing, and that's not good for the community. So institutionalizing the work of community economic development is very important, and community economic development is the key to turning communities around, particularly Black communities, because it focuses on things like livable wage jobs, affordable housing, the right education, and creating the infrastructure in the community so that it can manage itself.
Okay, we have about 2 or 3 minutes left. I want to make sure I ask you this question about the schools. I'm hearing a lot about what's happening these days in the public schools and how it may be impacting teachers and children. Do you have any comments on that, or if not, any other thing you'd like to say?
Education is a major institution. It's, again, we prepare our young people to grow in adulthood and be productive. So if the school system is not functioning correctly, is not working to make sure our children have developed, then the community is not going to go anywhere. In most neighborhoods, the schools are the major physical entity in that neighborhood that has the ability to bring the neighborhood together and organize the neighborhood. So schools are very important, and we're looking to work with the Board of Ed to make sure that they integrate themselves into what we're trying to do as a community.
Right. And I know we have a wonderful young man who is on that Board of Ed. You probably work with him. I believe his name is Khalik Barnes. Mm-hmm. But we have just a minute left. I want you to repeat the website, but and very quickly tell us about your monthly gathering for mental health and children in Ward 8, I believe.
One of the things that came out of the report is the need to focus on mental health and trauma. So we put together a monthly open house, first of every Tuesday at the Arts Center, where people could come, and the discussions are very good. It's very healthy. We talk about the impact of mental health on individuals and community, and trauma, the role that trauma plays in creating problems. We also have a male support group for males ages 14 and up that we meet every third Wednesday of the month, and that's been very productive. So those things can be found on our website. Our website is Ward8CEDthinktank.com. Ward8CEDthinktank.com.
Mustafa Abdul-Salaam, we want to thank you very much for the work you're doing, and we hope to have you on in the future. I hate to I hate to rush like this, but we're just about at a time. Again, repeat the website one more time. Ward8CED.
Ward8CED. Well, excuse me. It's WCED. W8CED Think Tank. It's W8CED Think Tank.
WHCED Think Tank. Okay. And that is Mustafa Abdul-Salaam doing very important work, I say, in the spirit of Marion Barry and many others. Keep up the wonderful work. And we are going to transition now. We're going to be continuing at 11 o'clock with a special hour focusing on the 2 rallies that took place on Saturday. So stay tuned. But we're going to go out with a song again that Ambrose Lane Jr. Sr. used to play, and I think it's very appropriate for the work that Mustafa Abdul-Salaam is doing and all of us are doing. So let's hear it, Mikey. Thanks so much for Magic Mike. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Mari. And we'll see you in a few minutes.
Well, you better listen, my sisters and brothers, 'cause if you do, you can hear there are voices still calling across the years, and they're all crying across the ocean, and they're crying across the land, and their will to we all come to understand. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free.
And welcome. This is Joni Eisenberg with a special hour 2 of To Heal DC, and it's really to heal this world of ours. We're going to be focusing this hour on the two rallies that took place on Saturday. One focused on Gaza and the genocide that continues to strengthen and get worse and worse. Just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it does. We're going to focus on that rally, as well as the second rally, Hands Off rally, that took place near the monument, that covered a whole range of issues. We're going to be speaking for the first half an hour with Medea Benjamin. Hopefully Medea will be on with us soon. I know she was committed to the first half an hour. And then, Medea's on. Great. Okay.
Yes, I'm here, Joni.
Welcome. And the second half hour, we're going to be talking to some federal workers with the Federal Unionist Network. And one of them may jump on with Medea because she was also at both rallies. Medea, before we jump in, I was delighted to find the clip from none other than our own Reverend Graylin Hagler speaking. I think it was the first speaker at the Hands Off rally. So let's hear it, Mikey.
We are all over the country. We're standing up by the millions. Our voices are strong. We will not sit down. We will not be quiet. And we will not go away. Let all the racists and the ignorant folks and the bigot folks running this government understand that we are people strong and America strong, and we're not going away. Continue to press your case. Continue to stand strong. Continue to represent the best of the U.S., which is free speech, the right to assemble, and the right to challenge government. Challenge it, challenge it, and challenge it.
And that was our own Reverend Graylin Hagler, who was on the radio with us for many, many years, works with an organization called Faith Strategies. Plymouth Congregational Church, was the lead minister for many years. We are very proud of Reverend Hagler as he continues, despite his challenges, to speak loudly. And I'm glad that Medea is on with us. Good morning, Medea.
Good morning, Joni. Nice to be on with you.
Yes, likewise. And of course, we are going to be talking about the both rallies, Medea. But you may want, knowing you and knowing, of course, Medea is with Code Pink. We are extremely proud, I'm going to say, of Code Pink. I'm sure many of our listeners are. Although there are people who don't know you, it always surprises me. But tell us, just start with Medea, the horror. Horror isn't even the word, a strong enough word for the genocide that is continuing each and every hour with our tax dollars. It's just horrible. As Netanyahu is right here, I believe, meeting with Trump today. So just share with our listeners who might not have heard Democracy Now, or just some of how horrific things continue to be over there in Gaza.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing up that to start with, because Trump is meeting with Netanyahu today. The horror is just unspeakable, Joni. Mm-hmm. They say that since the Israelis broke the ceasefire on March 18th,
the UN has said that at least 100 children have been killed or injured every single day.
Mm.
And on top of that, Israel has, for over a month now, sealed the borders so that there is no food or medicines going in. I mean, this is such unspeakable cruelty that it just boggles the mind that the administration can act as if Netanyahu is a statesman. They rolled out the red carpet for him when his plane landed yesterday in the afternoon. He's at the beautiful Blair House right across from the White House and having all kinds of meetings today to talk about how to exterminate totally the people in Gaza, how to hand over the West Bank totally to Israel. Netanyahu pushing always to attack Iran. Netanyahu says he's here to get Trump to lift the tariffs on Israel, to make an exception for Israel, and to get more weapons. And Joni, just last week in the Senate, there was a vote on a resolution put forward by Bernie Sanders to stop $8.8 billion more in weapons from going to Israel. And this included 35,000 new 2,000-pound bombs. And we were only able to get 13 members of the Senate to vote for that. No, 15 members of the Senate to vote for that. So, our administration and our Congress continues to be beholden to this genocidal government and the Israel lobby. And meanwhile, the world is looking on in horror, as are many people here in the United States, and feeling helpless because the only thing we can think of doing today is going outside the White House where people are gathered to yell and scream. But this has got to stop.
Absolutely. And there was a horrific thing that happened on, it's really unbearable to even talk about it. It was discussed on Democracy Now! This morning, and it was shared with me by Katia, the horrific journalist who was just burned alive along with other journalists. I think this was just last night.
It's horrifying. I will say his name, Ahmed Mansour. He's one now of over 200 journalists who have been killed. And the fact that the mainstream media doesn't make this a front and center issue today, seeing a journalist, we have the video of him being burned alive by Israeli strike. His legs, you can see, are still moving in the flames. It's just, how can you even just compute in your own mind how Western journalists have been staying silent for months, or even worse, spreading Israeli propaganda while their colleagues are being burned alive before our eyes.
Absolutely. And I do want to say that I'm proud of WPFW because we did broadcast from 12 noon till 4 p.m. And for those of you who can access our archives, although it may not say the words rally, but you can check on the 12 p.m. show on Saturday, and then the 2 p.m. show Saturday, which is Bill Wax. And if you check in there, you can hear certainly most, if not all, of the Gaza rally. The other rally we'll talk about in a moment, the sound wasn't that complete. But we want to let listeners know that if you were not there, check out the archives and you will hear some of the powerful speakers, Palestinian speakers, and much more on Saturday.
And Joni, before we leave that, let's just also mention the killing of the emergency workers that just happened 2 days ago, caught on video, that exposes Israel's blatant disregard for human life by attacking this convoy that was so clearly marked, and then burying the ambulances and the emergency workers, and then the people in Gaza finding the phone video that showed how clearly it was marked. So how long can Israel keep getting away with killing journalists, emergency workers, and of course, thousands and thousands of children?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this is being done in the so-called interests of the corporate imperialist fascist interests of this country is what is enabling Israel to do this. And I must say, Medea, as I've kind of say once in a while on the radio, that on my mom's side, we had 35 people that were killed by Hitler in those concentration camps. And as horrific as that is, it's not the only horrific thing that has happened to people, but to know that this is just continuing on. And one good thing I'll say about these rallies, Medea, in both rallies, everywhere you turn, the word fascist was everywhere. And so at least people know that we are in, and some might say we've been in for a while, but we are certainly in right now, which is definitely a fascist regime. And
yes, but Joni, as we're moving to look at the big rally and all of the issues that Trump is responsible for, please let's not forget that this genocide happened under a Democratic president. We cannot forget that and act like this is now all on the shoulders of Trump.
That is true. That's absolutely correct. But I'm thankful, at least, that the word fascism is definitely out there these days. Saw it everywhere in both rallies. So, Medea, tell us what you want to share about the Gaza rally, and one thing about the other rally, which we'll share more. Apparently, I have found very few people, even the activists that were there, who actually heard much of that rally, hands-off rally. Thankfully, it's on social media now, and you can find it. But certainly the Gaza rally, however, was, from what I could tell, very well recorded. So share with us some of the highlights for you of that rally, and of course, as the rally moved to march on ice later in the day as well.
Yes, well, I think that it was so wonderful to have some of the students and the Columbia alumni who were in that movie, The Encampment. And if people haven't seen it, it is playing in Angelica Theater here in Washington, D.C. Very, very important to see. And so we had representatives from Columbia University who got up and spoke not only about what's happening in Gaza, but also what's happening on their campus, and how the issue of Mahmoud Khalil, the student who is in detention now in Louisiana, and also the issue of the brutal way that students were cracked down upon that we see so clearly in that video. And this was so important to then attach to the march to ICE, to connect it to the immigrant rights issues, much more broadly speaking. In terms of the rally itself, it had some really stunning visuals, huge pictures of some of the members of the press in Gaza who have been murdered by the Israelis, hundreds of shoes lined up, children's shoes, to represent the thousands of children who have been killed. And it was a very spirited rally and march. And it was wonderful to see the people who had come in from all over the country, because unlike the hands-off rally, which were happening all over 1,000 around the country, so amazing, there was only this one rally, which had been planned separately and beforehand, but this was the only one happening yesterday, and on Saturday. And it was great to see people who had come in from quite far away to want to be there and stand together. And a lot of people I talked to, Joni, were saying that in this horror, the only thing that keeps them going is community, is being together and things like this. So it was a very heartfelt and important rally to bring us together to say, don't normalize genocide, don't lose hope, keep getting out there, keep organizing. It's the only thing that we can do if we are human beings watching what's happening.
Absolutely. And for those folks who have not yet been out to these rallies, who are physically able to do so, we would highly encourage you to get out there. There's actually a lot of joy in those rallies, despite the horror. There's joy in coming together with community. One thing that was great about the rally, many of the things, was the involvement, very active involvement from the Palestinian youth movement. Can you talk a little bit about that, Medea?
Well, yes, they are stupendous organizers, and you have to put this in the context that they are under such tremendous attack. Mm-hmm. They're being attacked at their universities, they're being attacked at their jobs, they're being attacked as an organization with members of Congress wanting them to be investigated. And so to not only organize these rallies, but to show up, many of them without covering themselves, their faces right out there, is a tremendous act of courage. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for the Palestine youth movement and their ability to organize and their ability to cast aside their own fears, recognizing that this is a moment in history where the most important thing is to be organizing to try to stop U.S. support for this genocide. So they are tremendous as an organization and as individuals.
Absolutely. And again, I'm proud that PFW has been working in partnership with them to the extent we can and has promoted some of their work that they were doing this weekend. Can you talk, Medea? And I don't have all the details on top of my head, but I know the Palestinian Youth Movement often talks about, is it Merck's, the horrific company that's getting ready to ship, I think, from Richmond as well as from New Jersey, more and more of these horrific things that will help to kill more people. And I know the Palestinian Youth Movement has been focused on that for a while.
Yes, this is the company called Maersk. It's a shipping company that has been transporting everything, including weapons, to Israel. And the Palestine Youth Movement and others have had a boycott. And those shipments have been interrupted in a number of different countries. It's very exciting to see how this Danish shipping company now has not only such a terrible reputation, but has been forced to look for other shipping routes. Of course, what we want to do is to force them to stop carrying goods to Israel. But there have been some advances, like the government of Spain that announced it was blocking their ships that were carrying military cargo to Israel. There are efforts in many countries around the world to jointly come together and to stop these shipments. In fact, here in the U.S., there was a march on Jersey City because that was one of the ports where the Maersk was stopping to load military cargo going to Israel.
Yes, and I think Maersk is getting ready to do another shipment, if I heard it at the rally, in New Jersey. I don't know if they said Teaneck, or I was surprised where it was in New Jersey.
I think it's the Port of Elizabeth.
Yes, that's right. And also in, I believe, in Richmond. So that's coming up, I think, this week. So I'm sure there are going to be a lot of protests there as well. I just wanted to briefly introduce, and we're going to hear from her more in the second half hour, Emilya, who is with the Federal Unionist Network, and we'll introduce her more soon. But Emilya, welcome. And you attended both rallies, and you were also in the march to ICE. Share with our listeners, and again, we'll hear from you more soon, but what were your comments about, specifically about the rally around Gaza and the march to ICE?
Well, I was very pleased to be able to see such a large crowd because I had friends from universities come all the way from Massachusetts just for this rally, and getting to march and stand side by side with colleagues and friends and siblings of other unions was just really important and great to see.
And we're glad you were there. And Medea, share a little bit about that march to ICE and what that was like and the importance of it.
Well, I was there with our Code Pink contingent, and we too had people who came in from different parts of the country, which was great. And I think connecting it to ICE is so important because first we heard the case about Mahmoud Khalil, and then we hear of case after case after case, and we see Marco Rubio bragging that they have revoked the visas of over 300 students who've been participating in acts that he calls supporting the terrorists, but of course we called opposing a genocide. And this is in the context of the deportations that ICE is doing to the immigrant community in general, of tearing families apart, picking people up in the middle of the night or from their workplaces. And so I think that connecting these two issues is so critical. One is focused a lot on the issue of free speech, and particularly at our universities, but it is part of this larger issue of immigrant rights and taking away the rights of people to even appeal for asylum. If you have the border closed off in Mexico and people are not allowed to come in to even ask for asylum, then this is a total violation of the laws of this country and international law as well. And let's not forget, when we talk about the issue of immigration, you look at where so many of the immigrants are coming from, and they tend to be countries where the U.S. has a terrible policy, either these brutal sanctions like they have on Venezuela and Cuba and Nicaragua, or where they are supporting military dictatorships. So we have a tremendous debt to a lot of the people who are fleeing for either economic or political reasons and should be allowed to seek asylum. And of course, on top of that is that the 11 million people who are living here and have been living here for so long without the possibility of a path towards citizenship deserve to have that.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, I wasn't able to attend much of the Gaza rally. Were there any politicians that spoke there?
There were no politicians, and it's interesting you bring that up, Joni, because as you know, at the Hands Off rally, there were quite a number of politicians.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they're all Democrats, and it's a much, quote, safer thing for them to do. But it is very hard and very telling that, sometimes we will get Rashida Tlaib, and poor Rashida, she's always the one who has to represent the Palestinian, the plight of Palestinians, when it should be way beyond just her. But so many of the members of Congress, even the ones who are sympathetic, are not sympathetic enough to appear in public. And they know that they will then be the target of the pro-Israel lobby, which is so powerful. So they too live in fear.
Yes, they do. And again, that's directly linked to the fascism that, as Medea said, it didn't just start now, but it's alive and well, that fascist movement. And Medea, what would you say, and we have a few minutes left with you, and of course it's a hard question, what should listeners be doing? What can we do to begin to turn this around somewhat? How can they join you in Code Pink? And again, the positive thing from both these rallies, there were a lot of people out there who are furious and are doing everything they can to stop this horrific, deeper and deeper move into fascism. But what would you say, Medea, what hope do you have, or what more can be done with those politicians to push them along somehow, or whatever you want to say?
Yeah. First, I want to say that in this, the hands-off movement, which was so strong and so many people came out into the streets all over the country, which is fabulous. But we have to add international issues to that because our foreign policy issues are so tied in. And unfortunately, the one international issue that was on the posters that were put out, the shareables put out by the organizers, was, in addition to the good things of hands off Social Security, hands off Medicare, they had hands off NATO, which is just insane because NATO is an aggressive military organization that encourages countries to take money away from Social Security, away from healthcare, away from dealing with the environment, and put it into war. So we need to educate people about why that should not be on our agenda. If you want to put other international things on the agenda, please say hands off Gaza, hands off Palestine, hands off Panama, hands off Canada, hands off Greenland, hands off Yemen, and we could go on and on. But the important thing is that we have to connect a progressive foreign policy. And when I say progressive foreign policy, that also means ending the war in Ukraine. And there were a lot of signs out there saying, we support Ukraine, we support NATO. People have to understand that is not a progressive agenda. A progressive agenda is ending wars, not fueling wars that can't be won on the battlefield and will only lead to so many more deaths. So that's one important thing. The other is, I think, to make sure that this isn't just something that happens every couple of months on a Saturday when the institutions that we're aiming to change are closed. And that's why I think it's so important that we go to Congress on a regular basis. And Joni, as you know, Code Pink is in Congress every single day.
That's right.
And we love to get new people to join us. And so if you live in the DC area, or even if you don't and can come in and take one day off work, call in sick, or if you are unemployed, or if you are retired, whatever, come and join us in Congress. And you can write to info@codepink.org, or you can literally just join us at 10 a.m. in the Rayburn building in the cafeteria where we meet. Or people can contact me, Medea, at MEDEA @codepink.org. We don't just do work inside of Congress. We do things like today, we're on our way to protest Netanyahu at the White House. So it's important to be involved in activism. And we are asking people to take a half hour of your day every day to do something to counter what our government is doing, whether it's on the issue of Gaza or saving Social Security. Spend some time every day to be part of a mass movement to change the Trump administration, both domestic policy and international.
Absolutely. So if people want to join you today in front of the White House, they can do so.
Yeah, just go down. We're going to be there until 10 o'clock tonight. You can meet us on 17th Street because of it's blocked off, but we'll be on the side of the 17th Street side. Probably some people may be on the 15th Street side as well. And you'll hear us because we have very loud bullhorns.
Medea Benjamin, I'm very proud of you. We're very proud of you. And you can hear Code Pink every Thursday here on WPFW at 11 a.m. Every Thursday at 11 a.m., Code Pink and their team of Code Pink. Medea's on sometimes, but there's other wonderful leaders in Code Pink. And I'm sure Medea will be happy to greet some of you today in front of the White House if you're able to. Well,
that's right, Joni. And anybody who can't join us physically either today or in Congress, please go to our website, codepink.org, sign up, and you'll get lots of ideas of things that you could do in your own home. But thank you so much for having me on, Joni, and thank you so much for WPFW for its fabulous work.
Thank you, Medea. And we're going to switch now to our second segment, talking with two members of the Federal Unionist Network. And we're going to give them a little music or a little chanting to bring them on. You're listening to WPFW 89.3 FM, Jazz and Justice Radio. This is a special with me, Joni, to Heal DC, and we're on till about noon. And the union does make us strong, even when they're under attack, as they are now, for sure. We have two wonderful guests for the rest of the hour, with the two guests with the Federal Unionist Network. I want to introduce David and Emilya. I'm going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves. David, let's start with you.
Sure. My name's Dave Casserly. I'm a rank and file member of AFGE Local 12. Local 12 is the union that represents headquarters Department of Labor employees. And I'm a member of FUN as well, and happy to come here and talk about us. Emilya?
I'm Emilya Ventriglia. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm a neuroscientist and labor organizer over at the NIH, and just very pleased to be on the show.
And we're very pleased to have you again, listeners. I'm surprised always a lot of activists and listeners don't know about FUN, the Federal Unionist Network. They've been on with us before, and they'll be on with us again. A very important, critical new movement that is out there and doing a lot. Dave, you want to just mention something about a little bit more about FUN for people who don't know? I know you represent the unions that represent federal workers. You're a national organization, and you're also definitely in the DMV. But anything more you want to say about FUN before we get into the rally on Saturday?
Sure. I'll say that FUN is a, rank and file or bottom-up organizing group. We don't have affiliates or anything like that with national unions. We welcome as members any federal employees who are eligible to be unionized, either those who are already unionized or those who are trying to get a union in their workplaces. FUN started, I believe, about a year ago, but it's really kicked up in the past few months with the change of administration.
Absolutely. And I want to just let people know I'm getting texts, very positive texts from Paul Asodabi. I may be saying his name wrong, who's a leader in FUN, who's been on with us before. And we want to share, and you will be hearing more about this, but we are working together, we, WPFW, and the Metropolitan Washington AFL-CIO and FUN, and together with some other activist organizations, April 16th, in honor of DC Emancipation Day, there will be a special event in the evening at the Metropolitan AME Church from around 6 to 9. With FUN is going to be very involved with it. You're going to be hearing from union activists as well as community activists talking about saving DC home rule and saving federal jobs and federal services. So you'll be hearing more about it soon, but we wanted to be the first to give that good news, thanks to support from FUN. So let's jump into the before we jump into the rally, FUN is also doing something tomorrow. And I apologize, Emilya, did you introduce yourself yet? If not, let's give you time.
I did.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to multitask here with these texts. But tell us, maybe Emilya, you can share what is FUN involved with tomorrow, April 8th.
Yeah, so, the thing I love so much about being a part of the Federal Unionist Network is we're really a wall-to-wall national group of folks who can share what's going on in the moment so we can act and meet that moment. And tomorrow is a national day of action that the FUN has helped with labor for higher ed, which is how can we save these cuts that are happening to our healthcare? And so in the DMV area, the DC metro area, people, including our union over at the National Institutes of Health, are going to be having a rally at Upper Senate Park. But there's actually dozens of events all across the United States. And you can find out more about that at killthecuts.org and participate in a city near you.
Killthecuts.org. That's a great slogan. So let's talk a little bit more about the rally on Saturday. Just yesterday, I was able to find actually some recordings from the rally. WPFW did air some of it, but again, that was in the 12 noon to 2 p.m. hour. If you go to our Saturday archives, it won't be named as such, but you can listen. At least it's not yet named, but whatever is the 12 p.m. show, check that, punch that in, and you will hear the beginning of the rally with Jamie Raskin. And I'm not sure who else we heard, but I later heard that Al Green gave a very powerful speech as well. I don't know if either of you heard it. We don't have time to play it today, but I encourage listeners to go and check what Al Green had to say about, I believe he was talking about impeaching that man in the so-called White House there. But Emilia, you want to start out with some of the things, even though I think you also could not hear the speeches, what you might have to share about the energy or the participation or the importance of the people that you saw out there.
Yeah, I'd love to, Joni. I definitely couldn't really hear much of the speeches because there was just thousands and thousands of people in the DC area. And it was amazing. Just the sheer number of people standing together. Also, a lot of signs that were really hilarious that just really captured a lot of the frustration and sometimes mobilized fear that we have. But we were there together and we showed out. And I just felt really energized because we hear all the time that this administration was what people voted for, but I saw tens of thousands of people and they were very clear that this is not what they voted for. And the fact that there were hundreds of thousands all across the United States, I was honestly blown away. And I think even the organizers of Hands Off were very blown away by the turnouts.
Absolutely. And Dave, what would you have to share about Saturday?
I'll share that it was great energy. We marched up, a bunch of us from FUN from the Federal Triangle area, and we passed a lot of other folks who had various union signs. It was really a great turnout moment for all of the area union workers, especially federal unions, but not just that. We saw people from the UAW there. I saw people with signs from IAM, not NIFI signs. And so we definitely had a really nice turnout at the rally. It was just a huge energy that I think I haven't personally been to, at least since the Science March quite a few years ago at this point, and maybe even before that. So yeah, it was a great experience. I'm glad that FUN could be a part of it.
Absolutely. And our wonderful engineer, Magic Mike, can let us know. Can we take calls, Mikey? If so, 202-588-0893. We have time for a couple of calls if you want to jump on real quick. 202-588-0893. And the cross section of people there in that rally, at least in terms of the issues, it wasn't necessarily a cross section of people in all ways, but definitely the issues. There were a lot of signs around the issue of fascism, a lot of signs against Gaza, even though there wasn't a focus on Gaza, and a lot of anger, but mixed in together with the anger, there was also joy and hope. Even though we couldn't hear the discussions, what was interesting is that in parts of the right in front of the monument, there were other things going on, their own rallies with chanting, And one brother I heard, one of my favorite chants was no Trump, no ICE, no KKK, no racist, fascist USA. And that was chanted by probably hundreds of people for quite some time. And that was not part of the official march, but it was really a lot happening out there in the grounds. It kind of reminded me, and you both are too young to know, but it reminded me of the Vietnam War days when so many people were out there and so many people were fed up. So it was hopeful. Did either of you have a chance to hear since you left the rally some of the speeches, such as from Al Green or Jamie Raskin? We did play Jamie Raskin on Saturday, and of course he started out talking about Frederick Douglass, and he started out talking about the need for DC statehood. So that was, and he went on to other things, but that was one of the many encouraging things. And of course, the unions were very prominent there as well. But share either Emilia or Dave, what else you found to be important there at the rally? Emilia, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So, something I found to be really important was how multi-generational it was. I saw people with their babies. I saw little kids. I saw grandparents and full families. And people were very happy to talk to one another and build community and ask questions. We had our UAW wheels because I'm with UAW, and people had asked me questions about how I think about things or what the kind of work I do is and what's happening. And I just thought that was really amazing. And that's to me how you build a movement is having those connections to your fellow community members.
Absolutely. It was definitely multi-generational. There were a lot of babies there and being pushed along in their carriages. There were teenagers, young people, and also people who I would say were way beyond their 70s into their 80s and maybe even their 90s. So there was definitely a cross section. I would say people had come from certainly all around the region. I would say there was not as enough cross section in terms of racial composition of the crowd, but I was glad to see at least definitely in terms of age and where people were coming from. There was a good cross section. Again, if you want to call in, we still have time. 202-588-0893 if you have a question or we do have one caller. Okay, caller, jump on your name and your question or comment.
Stuart Morris from Hyattsville.
Good morning, Stuart.
Hello? You got me?
Yes, we got you.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was any pushback mounting against Sean Fain's kind of selfish and myopic championing of the tariffs into what happened to, united we stand, divided we fall. I don't think Sean Fain ought to be allowed to get away with his single union support for Trump's tariffs. Thank you.
And Stuart, are you in the union? Are you involved with the labor? I guess you hung up. Okay, does anyone have a comment on that? That's an important question. Dave, do you want to? If not, we can keep talking, but it's an important, a very important question.
I don't have a comment on that specifically. I will say that I certainly agree with the caller that now is a time for labor solidarity across all unions, and now is a time when we should be united in opposition to the administration. But I don't have a comment specifically about Sean Fain, and I'm sure Emilia doesn't have a comment about her own union. So, yeah.
Or she may not be in a position to make a comment. It's a very, very important point, though, that these days that labor should be ideally united in what we are striving for. And that is an unfortunate development, I would say, with UAW. Let's talk about some more of what you saw out there and where you see this movement heading. What if I wish that I was able to. I know that Al Green. Did you either of you hear Al Green, or if anybody out there heard Al Green's comments? I know it's available on social media. I believe he was calling for impeachment of you might guess who. He gave a very powerful talk, and again, for whatever reason, they didn't seem to be prepared to really. Oh dear, someone is trying to call me. I'm getting texts. But any other comments about what you heard? And if someone's calling me from Harriet's Wildest Dreams, if you want to call on the air, 202-588-0893.
Well, thanks, Joni. I think you were asking about where we see this going. And first thing I can say to that is I think the Hands Off folks are doing another rally on May 1st. It's International Labor Day. There will be events in every city again. I hope people turn out in droves just as much. We heard during the previous segment, I guess, an exhortation to come out during the workday and not just on weekends when we're off. And I think that's going to be very important when International Labor Day comes around on May 1st. Another thing about where this is going is fun is sent, and we think the rallies have sent a big message to the administration that we may be federal workers, we may be used to taking orders in our regular day jobs, but we are not going to take the dismantling of our government, the dismantling of our public services sitting down. And we are going to rally and do everything we can to stop that and to fight it. Emily, do you have any comments on our next steps?
I do love what you're saying, is that, it's great to come in on the weekend, but showing up when we tomorrow are going to be in Upper Senate Park. We're right outside, Congress's workplace. Let's show them while they're sitting in their offices that the public is serious about our Medicare, is serious about NIH and our education in America. And I think we have to get more and more energized and excited to stand shoulder to shoulder. Because I'm excited for May and what will the future hold?
Absolutely.
And for anybody who wants to come to the rally tomorrow, it's at 4 p.m. at Upper Senate Park, and it's a rally to save our public health here in the country, which has been, has seen huge illegal cuts into the, talking about 75% of some of our public health agencies are gone. And when it comes to international public health, even more than that, pretty much all of it is gone. Pandemics don't, stay in one country. World public health is American public health. And this is going to be a rally to save what we can and to stop any further cuts and restore what we've lost.
Absolutely. And I believe it was either this week or last week was National Public Health Week. So the fact that this is going on, then tell people where that rally exactly is, if they're not sure is it Upper Senate Park, or Emilia, can you tell people where to go?
Absolutely. Upper Senate Park. I'm not sure what train stop it's right off of, but it's
Union
only
Station.
Really a Union Station. Thank you. It's just about a couple minute walk, and you'll definitely see people, and we'll be right there on the green.
Okay. And Emilia, can you, and we're just, okay, let's real quick. Okay, caller, real quick, we're almost out of time. Your question and your comment.
Yeah, I attended a Free Gaza march and rally from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock yesterday at Pennsylvania and 3rd, and I'm really confused about was there a different march that was sanitized and did not feature Gaza?
Okay, we this whole hour we're talking about both marches. We've discussed that entirely in the first half hour, the Gaza march. Does Emilia, you want to address that? There was the hands-off rally was taking place all around the country. The Gaza march was specifically in the DC area. There was a lot of support for Gaza in the rally. I'm not sure. In the hands-off rally, I'm not sure there were any speeches, though. Any comment real quick? Otherwise, we'll...
Yeah, I can be quick. So like you said, Hands Off was at the start of the day and had events over, 500,000 people across the United States. And this is Hands Off, the people didn't vote to stop cancer research. The people didn't vote to stop Social Security. They didn't vote for the war machine, really. And that's why a lot of us actually did turn out to the rally afterwards on free speech and for the war that's happening in Gaza, the genocide. And so I think those two things are in line together. And we saw a lot of people in the march, and I was excited to be a part of it.
Yes, and I'm sorry to be rushing. I think we have one last caller. Call you real quick, your name and your question. This is a caller.
Can you hear me? This is
yes.
Nefa.
Welcome. Your name and your comment or question.
Hi, this is Nefa Freeman.
Hey, Nefa.
I'll be real quick. I heard and I hope I'm not off topic, but I heard the mention about the racial composition of I think it was the Gaza thing. And I think people should know our enemies are very, Black Lives for Peace and others were out there, but it was not what it should be. And there's been a campaign to dissuade Black people from coming to these things, saying we should stay home. Actually, a stay home campaign on social media and things like that. And so, we need to denounce these things and try to counter them. But I think people should be aware of those kind of dynamics in terms of what our enemies are up to.
Nefa can be heard tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Voices with Vision. But do you have any idea who you think it was behind that campaign to keep Black people away?
I don't know now. I know some of my colleagues or comrades have done more research on it, so I'm not the best one to ask. But I know there's a lot of these kind of ADOs and other ones that are trying to dissuade the internationalism, discourage the internationalism. It's part of our tradition of anti-imperial. But specifically,
as we know, Nefa, this is the so-called United States of imperialism, of racism, of capitalism. So they're going to keep doing what they can to keep us divided. That's one of their main tactics. As long as they can keep us divided, they are winning. But once we come together, they're gonna be losing big time. Nefa has a very important event on Wednesday night. Can you just very quick tell our listeners what's happening on Wednesday?
The Wednesday is the Assata Shakur Study Group session of the Pan-African Community Action, and the topic is DC government's war on Southeast, and it's at the Black Workers and Wellness Center at 2500 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, across the street from the Anacostia Metro. It's both a hybrid and a in-person, but you can register for both on the war on Southeast .eventbrite.com, something like that. The war on
and that's going to be very important speaker there. That's going to be talking about what's happening and what has been happening with the police and more. So again, you can check out Nefa tomorrow at Tuesday at 9 a.m. We're just about out of time, right, Mikey? We got to be off. Oh, okay. I want to thank Mikey Nasella very much for all of his help. We couldn't have done it without him. Thank you for Katia. Making sure there was this extra hour. Thank you to the Federal Unionist Network. Very much thanks to Dave and to Emilia. We hope to be in touch with you. Not just in touch with you, but we'll be marching with you and working with you to turn this situation out. We're going to go out with a song we've been playing for the last 2 hours.
None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free. And there are people still in darkness, and they just can't see the light. If you don't say it's wrong, then that says it's right. We got to try to feel for each other. Let our brothers know that we care. Got to get the message, send it out loud and clear. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free.
Wondering how to get WPFW swag in your life? Items that say, I support jazz and justice without saying a word. We've got you covered. Details and browsing at WPFWFM.org. Again, that's WPFWFM.org.
Hey, this is Alvin Nedab, your host of Music Memories and my co-host,
Deborah Nedab.
And guess what, Deborah?
What?
We're moving.
We're moving?
That's right. We're moving from Mondays, 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. till Saturdays, 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. starting next Saturday, March 22nd. And Deborah, guess what?
What?
We're going to still continue to play the best old school music of all time. So we just want you to be there. 89.3.
Are you in the process of writing or updating your will, trust, or estate plan? We invite you to consider adding WPFW as a beneficiary through a charitable bequest. Bequests can take many forms and are usually the largest and most impactful gift a donor will ever make. Your bequest will help to ensure the programming WPFW has provided for almost 50 years will continue into the future. More info available by email at plannedgiving@wpfw.org or by phone at 202-588-0999, extension 344. Or you can let us know you've already included PFW in your plans through those same channels so we can add your name to our growing list of legacy listeners. We are listener supported. We are Jazz and Justice. And because of your support, we are WPFW.
Hi, this is Jim Byers, host of the Latin Flavor Classic Edition. For nearly 5 decades, support from listeners like you has kept WPFW's wheels rolling. In fact, the single largest category of donations comes from those who donate an unused car to the station. That's right, running or not. Even a car sitting idle that needs thousands of dollars in repairs can do wonders for WPFW. If you can't drive it, donate it. WPFW will get the proceeds, and you'll get a tax break. Go to WPFWFM.org or call 1-866-WPFW-CAR. That's 1-866-973-9227 for more information. Help WPFW continue building a better world, one broadcast at a time.
For close to 50 years, WPFW has amplified the voices, told the stories, and shared the history and culture of Black people throughout the diaspora. In short, we are